Hello and welcome everyone, it is me the Laval, also known as the Power to Duel, is back for you with another video and another Master Duel deck profile. This time we're taking a look at Battlin Boxers, an archetype that has gotten its new support earlier this week in the new selection pack that I've been a huge fan of kind of since the new support dropped last year in Old Burning Volcano. So let's quickly run this deck down, take a look at a couple of replays and, maybe give some final thoughts. Deck. Ignoring the non-engine for now in the main deck, we start with 2 copies of Battlin Boxer Glassjaw. This is mostly important as something you want to have attached to your Xyz monsters, because if this guy is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can add a Battlin Boxer monster from the graveyard back to your hand. Incredibly powerful effect, allowing you to, of course, stay in those games, continue fighting for further rounds, as you like to say, if you want to make a boxing analogy. But yeah, good card. Then we move on to copies of Spora. This is just another nice archetype extender. If you control a Battlin Boxer monster, you can special summon this guy from your hand, but you don't get a battle phase for the rest of the turn. Turn 1, that's not really the restriction, and turn 2 onwards, you will kind of have to make sure that if you are summoning this guy, you don't really need your battle phase. Otherwise, we have one switch hitter here. I was playing 2 in the TCG pack, mainly cut down to 1 here, which I think works very fine. When this guy's normal summoned, you can target a Battlin Boxer in your graveyard, special summon it, but this guy hard locks you into Battlin Boxers, which is present on 2 cards in this deck, meaning no other special summons, which can be quite rough, but makes the extra deck at a certain point rather flexible. Very nice. Switch hitter is either just a good extender to grab mid-combo, if you have the gas for it, or just, something good you can grab for like a potential follow-up, because he's always another rank 4 if you already have guys in the graveyard. Then something I was already a huge fan of in the TCG, but I'm an even bigger fan of in Master Duel specifically, Saki Tama, 3 copies that is. You can reveal this guy in your hand and then normal summon a spirit monster from your hand, which this of course is. Meaning this is an extender that plays under the Battlin Boxer lock, because both Promoter and Switch hitter only lock you out of special summoning other monsters. And it's an extender that does not give your opponent a draw off of Maxi, which I think is a huge deal, that I think at MD you might want to take advantage of. Even if you can, of course, say, silly Internet Moftronic man just wants to flex a Royal. But it's a decent extender, really. Especially since most of your rank 4s are generic. Lead Yoke is the only one that specifically needs Battlin Boxers. So you're kind of fine in a lot of cases. I really like this card. Has been putting in a lot of work. Then we have 3 Uppercutter. Uppercutter is 1 effect per turn. You're either on summon adding a Battlin Boxer monster or a counter trap to your hand, or if he's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, resummoning a Battlin Boxer monster from your graveyard, or resetting a counter trap from your graveyard. Not really a problem that you're limited to 1 effect per turn, since you're most likely summoning this guy on your turn to add, mentioned cards, be it a monster or a counter trap. And on your opponent's turn, you're probably detaching this for one of your Xyz effects, and getting, some value back, which is incredible. Another great tool that helps this deck really stay in the fight over the course of a couple turns. Nice part about Uppercutter as well is that you can search non-Battlin Boxer counter traps, mainly Flamwell counter, which he also nicely enough fits the stat requirement of being a 200 defense fire monster. Then we have another Battlin Boxer here, another 3-off in a 3 Chief second. This guy just gives you an additional normal summon while he's on the field, mind you. This is not an activated effect, this is a continuous effect. And then he has a kind of cute, I guess, Battle Fader-esque effect. While you control a fire monster or warrior monster, if this guy's in your hand and you get attacked, you can negate that attack, special summon him, and then banish a monster until the end phase. Which can be kind of cute, but it doesn't come up a whole lot, so don't count on it. And then I guess the main man himself in Battlin Boxer Promoter, this is an absolutely absurd card. If your opponent controls a monster, you can special summon this guy from your hand. You can tribute this guy to special summon up to 2 Battlin Boxers from your deck with different names. And you can banish this guy from your graveyard to increase or decrease the levels of all Battlin Boxer monsters you control by 1. Very powerful array of effects, which is of course also hit with a very powerful restriction in that you are locked into Battle and Boxer monsters, special summon of Battle and Boxer monsters. The turn you use any of these, yeah, which is fair. That's a crazy card. Any other archetype would probably kill for like a free body. That's also a rescue rabbit for 2. And then also has like a nice utility effect because the level increase can enable you to make like this a couple of powerful rank 5s in this deck, mainly C79, a Battle and Boxer General Kaiser, which is a walking solemn warning. We have a Rotor here because we're playing a warrior deck, of course. 2 Battle and Boxing Spirits. This sends the top card of your deck to the graveyard and then targets a Battle and Boxer monster to the graveyard. Special summons that target and face up defense position. Sometimes just a nice extender to have. Then we have 2 Infernoble Arms Durandal. You can pop this if it's equipped to a monster and add a level 4 lower Fire Warrior monster, which are, of course, you know, all the Battle and Boxers. Or basically copies Rotor for 2 and 3, which is, you know, very handy. Mainly, you know, copies Promoter 5 and 6. Then we have the 1 Flammable counter. When a spell trap is activated, banish a fire with 200 defense from your graveyard, negate the activation if you do destroy it. And then we have an archetype target in Battle and Boxing cross counter. This is a monster negate counter trap. Destroys a Battle and Boxer or number exceeds monster you control. And if you do, negate the activation. And if you do that, destroy the monster. And then if you do that, you can apply the following effect, which is special summon a Battle and Boxer extra deck with a different name than the first monster. Something to keep in mind, a lot of these effects are and if you do, meaning if you don't destroy a monster, you don't negate the effect, and if you don't destroy the monster, then you also don't get to summon. So make sure that you do not protect the monster you are popping with this, with a Lead Yoke, for example, because then your opponent's card effect will resolve, which is kind of not the point of counter trap. And then, you know, getting into, I guess, the non-engine of this, 3 Veiler, 3 Ash, a Nibiru, 2 Tactics, a Thrust, 2 Called by, a Crossout Designator, and 3 Imperm. This deck has, like, a lot of flex spots for, you know, non-engine, which is very nice. Handtrap lineup in Veiler, Ash, Imperms. I feel like the most applicable ones that aren't a certain level 2 Earth Insects, because I refuse to craft that card. If you know, want to run it, I think shaving the Tactics and the Thrust is perfectly fine for it. But yeah, I'm not spending the night on it because I'm still hoping that piece of shit gets banned. Otherwise, moving into the extra deck, we have an Abyss Dweller here, which is a good rank 4 to make into some matchups. Battle Boxer Lead Yoke can be quite annoying to deal with. Being destruction immune twice is kind of cool. Guy takes 2 Battle Boxer monsters. And if a Battle and Boxer you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can detach a material from them instead of destroying one of those monsters, meaning if, you know, something would destroy multiple monsters, you will have to choose. And if a material is detached from this guy, he gains 800, which is kind of... Star Cestus is kind of like a cowboy, something to burn the opponent for game with. Basically, if a Battle and Boxer monster battles, you can detach a material and then your opponent takes the battle damage. Can be kind of cute. Nova Kaiser is a very nice tool to set up Zeus, because this guy is able to, during the main phase, attach a Battle and Boxer monster from your hand or graveyard to himself. When he's destroyed, he floats into level 4 lower Battle and Boxers from your graveyard equal to material. But since you're making this guy with 2 materials, attaching another, you can very easily set up a 4 material Zeus that way if you don't Battle and Box block yourself, which can be the tough part sometimes. Then we have 2 copies of a very crazy card that probably a lot of you know by now, because this has applications in other decks. Battle Boxer King Dempsey. On special summon, this adds or dumps a level 4 lower Fire Warrior or a Battle Boxing Spell Trap, meaning you get easy access to like a cross counter, meaning a promoter summoning an uppercutter and your sample counter, and then, you know, making a King Dempsey with the second Battle Boxer, probably a Glassjaw. The King Dempsey can add you a cross counter, meaning a promoter easily turns into 2 spell speed 3 disruptions, which is kind of neat. Then we have a Comet Cestus here, just an archetypal Flame Wingman. Since you're not ranking up into this guy, you don't really get the second effect. But if you destroy something by battle, you burn your opponent for half the destroyed monster's original attack, which is kind of cute. It's something you can float into off of a cross counter if you don't feel that threatened by your opponent. But mostly you will be summoning a Lead Yoke off of cross counter. We have a Vespanado here to kind of have something to put on your rank 4s, to have some floating going on if you're low on resources on a follow-up. 2 General Kaiser, as mentioned, you know, can make this with the level modulation effect of Promoter if you do have like quite a lot of gas for this. And then this is just a detached 2 to negate an inherent or built-in special summon your opponent would perform. A Zeus, and then we're playing a Heater, Princess, Ambler Whale line. Sometimes I feel like you can go into this. There have been like 1 or 2 games where while playing this deck, I've been hit with like a couple lower impact hand traps, had like a couple guys on the board, and then just said, you know, hey, there's a nice Ash in your graveyard, let's do the Snake Eye thing. Heater for the Ash, Promethean Princess for the Heater, and then turn Promethean Princess into an Ambler Whale. And if you can get a Promethean Princess into the graveyard, this can be quite an annoying thing to deal with, especially since the deck is already very competent in a grind game. But let's look at a couple replays that I've kind of saved up to, you know, maybe get a feeling for how this deck works in actual games. And with that, we move into a game against Labyrinth here. Starting the game off by revealing a copy of Saitama in my hand, which is, of course, answered with a Max C. As mentioned in the deck profile, kind of why I do really like Saitama in this deck, specifically in Master Duel, because it allows you to make those very... Your standard board without, you know, giving your opponent unnecessary draws, because your board's not all that impressive. A King Dempsey with the 2, backed up by the 2 counter traps, it's like fine, but it's not crazy by any means. Hitting a normal summoned Ariana here with a cross counter, going for the funny, and summoning a Comet Cestus out here. Usually you'd want this to be a Lead Yoke. My opponent flips an Ice Dragon's Prison, which I don't really want to let resolve, so I do hit him with a Flammable counter to get that off the field. Normal summoning a Promoter here, going for a Spirits, which is once again answer. Great. So I just proceed to combat. Opponent's not doing too hard on the resources, so I don't really want to give my opponent additional draws. Especially because I am still, you know, in danger of getting the B-root here. I get Kaiju'd on the Comet Cestus on the follow-up, and my opponent hits me with a T-set. Most value a Comet Cestus has ever gotten realistically. The punishment sends an Untis here, popping the Gameciel, and then the Untis will pop the King Dempsey. But I do get the Promoter off finally, which is kind of nice. I'm not using the Uppercutter effect here because I want the effect on the Detach, which I chain to the on-summon Search of Dempsey to grab back a cross counter for the follow-up. Punching away a set Coup Clock here, which is going to net me a very quick concede from my Labyrinth opponent. But with this game out of the way, I think it is, of course, in tradition, a good time to poke fun at Cash Tira players. Look at that. And with that out of the way, we're in a game against my most hated. Hand's looking great, but Max C is certainly a card. Decided to grab an Uppercutter instead of a Promoter here, because this way I don't overextend into it. Because I can still get to both counter traps without, you know, special summoning too much. Putting a Chief Second onto the board here, using the additional normal from the Chief Second for the Uppercutter, grabbing a Flammable counter, which is of course very handy. But afterwards, I kind of say, hey, if I get Gamut on the Dempsey activation, maybe there's not a whole lot of gas left. The Pathfinder does kind of confirm to me that it's Cash Tira. Which is why I feel very content with, you know, Flammable countering a Prod of Prosperity for 6 after I hit that Pathfinder with a Veiler. Turn gets back to me, would have liked the more important, impactful draw than a Promoter, but I'm able to special summon this Promoter, try and use the effect which gets hit with that unfortunate Ash Blossom, but I do have the Battle Unboxing Spirits here to potentially keep going. Summon back the King Dempsey. Nice part about King Dempsey is that he triggers on special summon to search. Means I can grab a switch hitter, use my remaining normal summon to grab back the Glassjaw I just dumped off of that Spirits and make a Lead Yoke. In my opponent's draw phase, I once again go for that King Dempsey protection effect, detaching the Glassjaw off of Lead Yoke, adding back a Chief Second here. Opponent goes to normal copy of Cash Tira Rysart, confirming my suspicion that this is Imperialism.deck. Firing a Theosis for a Unicorn for a Birth. A Birth resummons the banished Fenrir. Fenrir grabs a Scare Cash. Almost everyone is here. Cue the Smash Brothers intro. Opponent goes to combat. I get to activate a Chief Second, banishing the Unicorn into the end phase because I don't want my opponent peeking into my extra deck. And then my opponent fires a Rysart while the Dempsey protection is live. Yeah, I know this is haha Yu-Gi-Oh! Players cannot read, but this is haha Cash Tira players cannot read. So for me, this is funnier. But with that out of the way, I think we'll take another look at the deck list. And with that, I'm back with the deck list. I I like this deck. I really like it. I'm a very simple man. If a deck has like a somewhat competent resource loop, I like it. And this is no exception. Glassjaw and Uppercutter give you amazing tools to keep playing on follow-up turns because you're continuously able to recycle cards like Promoter, like Switch Hitter off of a Glassjaw to keep making not necessarily like individually like crazy XZs, but just an assortment of guys that can be very annoying to deal with between the targeting protection from King Dempsey, as Orisehard found out the painful way, and the destruction protection from Lead Yoke. Even if there's a lot of non-destruction removal going around, it is kind of funny to see how often having to, you know, essentially no buttons for, you know, a destruction effect or, you know, a battle destruction can really put a damper on the thing. Especially when the Lead Yoke afterwards is 38k or 3800, which can, you know, beat over quite a lot of boss monsters. Meaning on the follow-up, you can probably assemble a game. Even if this deck can definitely struggle with dealing with very big idiots, especially big protected idiots, in a lot of cases. How often you lock yourself kind of sucks sometimes, but it is what it is. Otherwise, a very fun rank 4 strategy that has a lot of space for non-engine, which can definitely help you if you are, you know, going second, since you can kind of prevent your opponent from getting into like really impressive setups. Otherwise, you can a couple board breakers that are maybe a bit more aggressive than, you know, tactics that I am running. So, with all that out of the way, I will thank you guys very much for watching. Of course, just as always, let me know in the comments down below if you've, you know, grabbed the new Battle Boxer cards. I think there's definitely a couple of you guys that have. So yeah. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, just as always. But yeah, with all that out of the way, I will thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you guys again next time. But until then, goodbye.